Horikoshi just continues to drop absolute heat. This week's chapter of My Hero Academia, titled Even After All That, sees the continuation of Shigaraki versus Bakugo, as well as the synergy between the big three. Plus, we see exactly how determined Bakugo is. Seeing the big three all together has been something I've been looking forward to for a long time now. They've been heroes for Deku and his class to look up to, but we haven't really seen them in action as a unit, at least until now. We start off where we left off. Shigaraki is absolutely owning the battlefield, featuring his own Todoroki-style burn. He stands atop Bakugo with his foot on the young hero's head. This scene reminds me of Shigaraki mocking All Might's pose while standing on Endeavor during the last war. In both situations, he is gloating over a hero quite literally. As he stands over him, Shigaraki asks if Deku was supposed to be there. Last we saw, Deku was still flying over the sea and was encountering someone or something off in the distance. I really hope we get back to that soon, considering I think it is possible he is being intercepted by the pilot buddies of Star and Stripe. Shigaraki is still sporting his many mutilated hands. They now extend past his elbow, almost into his shoulder. As disgusting as his multitude of hands are, I must admit that combined with his wild white hair, it does look pretty sick as an opening panel. Shigaraki also used his hands to block off any heroes behind them. It is a strategic move that delays any heroes from stopping him. Shigaraki then answers his own question by saying he is sure Deku will arrive. It's probably all for one speaking here due to his utterly obnoxious fascination with One for All. Or perhaps Shigaraki just wants a rematch. Perhaps a bit of both. Shigaraki also ominously comments that having his quirks erased may have come in handy. As with his quirks at his disposal, all these heroes would have been eradicated in an instant. This inconvenience of sorts has now become more of a fun little exercise for him. It's plausible that Shigaraki simply enjoys beating down heroes without quirks. It proves their quirk-ridden society is beneath him in a way. And even without quirks, Shigaraki is insanely powerful. It's scary to imagine what this fight would have been like without Aizawa, but Shigaraki isn't doing badly, quirk or not. And I will say that the come in handy comment is a bit of a fun pun, considering his current mutation. Bakugo attempts to use his good arm, but it is all in vain. In response, Shigaraki does the most despicable, disrespectful thing and uses his foot to pick up and kick Bakugo. When I saw this panel leaked, I could hardly believe it. It is such a downright foul thing to do, but truly it is very much a Shigaraki thing to do. This guy is nothing if not disrespectful. Right after kicking him, Shigaraki destroys Bakugo's other gauntlet, rendering him practically without any means to defend himself. After all, he just survived being impaled in the last war arc. So Bakugo is really getting the short end of the stick again and again. Shigaraki then adds insult to injury by choking out Bakugo. He tells the young hero that he will leave nothing but a corpse behind and that killing him would only further enrage Deku, which is apparently something Shigaraki wants to provoke. This is mostly on account of the fact that while so emotionally charged, One for All is most susceptible to beguilement. Deku's anguish and frustration cannot match the likes of Shigaraki, allowing him to rather easily take control over the power. Yet as Bakugo previously told Deku, One for All works off of emotion. And I will say that another enraged Deku scene would be pretty pleasing. One of my favorite scenes from the war was Deku biting Shigaraki's forcible quirk activation skewers. And who doesn't like an otherwise gentle character going berserk? Shigaraki only continues to mock Bakugo while choking him, saying that since Bakugo grew up admiring All Might, it is only right he faces reality now. Just as he says that, Bakugo is encased in a coffin of hands, complete with an explosion of blood. Shigaraki saying he should face reality reminded me of what All Might originally said to Deku regarding a hero being quirkless. It feels like a much darker parallel. And at that, I am loving all the parallels so far. Horikoshi is really a master when it comes to foils. While on the topic of Deku, Shigaraki also tells Bakugo he will always live in Deku's shadow. There have been multiple instances of Bakugo mirroring Endeavor, but living in someone's shadow feels like yet another comparison between them. Even Endeavor thought he was existing in All Might's shadow. The callbacks, they are in surplus this chapter. Plus, the tomb of Shigaraki's hands remind me of Bakugo and the sludge villain. Once again, Bakugo is literally helpless against a great evil. And hopefully, once again, Deku will rescue him. Right now, things look bleak. But not to fear, the big three finally come onto the scene together. Nejire shows off a new attack called Nejire Pike. It looks to be a focus beam or quirk shaped like a lance. Unfortunately, Shigaraki isn't so easily defeated. He intercepts the attack by using Bakugo as a human shield, which forces Nejire to redirect the energy. It barely missed Bakugo, but the distraction was enough for Tamaki to attack from behind. He combines two animal traits, Octopus Mirage and Scorpion Toxin. The Mirage allows him to be camouflaged, while the Toxin is pretty self-explanatory. Shigaraki is momentarily surprised by the poison, but quickly purges it with a grotesque mouth that vomits out the toxin. He gloats, calling the poison pathetic. As we've seen previously, Shigaraki's body will continue to evolve to suit his needs, no quirk needed. With each chapter, Shigaraki becomes more and more of a candidate for quirk singularity theory. Even Shigaraki himself confirms that his body will evolve, as he sends a massive mess of hands and mouths directly at Tamaki. Thankfully, Tamaki seemingly escapes it, but all these close calls for the big three really has me worried one of them will not make it, especially due to Tamaki's graduation comment in the previous chapter. I have a strong feeling a hero will be dead before Deku arrives, only further fueling the final epic showdown between him and Shigaraki. All the heroes are putting up such a fight, but there are genuinely no match for Shigaraki, who could give Prime All Might a run for his money right now. Granted, Shigaraki did compare himself to All Might last chapter. In the middle of this attack, Mirio is able to rescue Bakugo, which feels like a feat all its own. Shigaraki is literally dominating the fight with his gross appendages, making it difficult to maneuver on the battlefield to begin with. Mirio throws Bakugo to best Jeanist, while Shigaraki tells Mirio he remembers him from the hospital raid, but says it with contempt. After all, Mirio was an unexpected variable in the last war arc. This does seem to be a trend though, considering he was meant to act as a messenger and bodyguard, not necessarily someone to be fighting against Shigaraki. However, I do think he is a pretty interesting matchup against Shigaraki, even if Shigaraki is currently lacking decay. Mirio introduces himself as Lemillion, stating that he is in charge of communication and defense. He explains that intercepting villains and passing messages was something only for someone who was fast and nimble, which explains where he has been. In response, Shigaraki sends more gross tendrils across the battlefield, which Mirio easily avoids. All the while, he asks Shigaraki why he has to break everything. Shigaraki tells him that the current systems have failed. Truthfully, he is not wrong. Hero society is really flawed, as we have seen with Lady Nagan and Endeavor. Not to mention, quirks that aren't socially acceptable are shunned, like togas. With all that being said, Nejire comes back into the fight. Well, sort of. She sees that Mirio is trying to close the gap with Shigaraki, so she lends her power. Nejire sends a spiral of energy that Mirio wraps around his arm, no doubt meant to bolster his punch against Shigaraki. Say what you will about Mirio, but you gotta admit he is a true hero, considering he is willing to literally fight in close quarters with Shigaraki. Mirio then tells Shigaraki the most obvious truth, that Shigaraki has never had any friends. This comment seems to strike a chord within Shigaraki to some extent, perhaps on account of the vulnerable child within him. He goes on further, telling Shigaraki he knows because if Shigaraki did have friends, he'd know some things aren't to be broken. All the while, even Mirio knows how crazy it is to fight Shigaraki like this, but is convinced he can do something with an empowered punch. At the very least, they can stall the fight until Deku gets there. Surprisingly enough, Mirio does land his punch while avoiding Shigaraki's tendrils. He is having to use his quirk in multiple areas, but it shows exactly how dedicated the heroes are to prolonging the fight for Deku. This man really needs to show up soon, otherwise, everyone is going to be minced meat before he arrives. Meanwhile, Best Jeanist is tending to Bakugo a little ways away. He tells Bakugo to show him his arm so he can sew it up, stating that they are still in need of Bakugo's quirk. The kid has been on the front lines in both wars, and Best Jeanist still wants him to fight, even if he has a destroyed arm. It shows the dire straits they are in. It doesn't matter how wounded they are, they must still fight. Bakugo doesn't respond. Instead, he is silently gripping the grass and crying. In a rather out of character moment, Best Jeanist tries to comfort Bakugo by placing a hand on his shoulder. Though he does continue to demand to see Bakugo's arm, telling him that the rest of the heroes will fight against Shigaraki somehow. Yet even Best Jeanist knows how bad the situation is, referring to Shigaraki as that thing, showing how inhumane Shigaraki has become. Not only that, but he acknowledges Shigaraki is out of any of the heroes' leagues. As he talks to Bakugo, it is pretty clear Best Jeanist has suffered injuries as well. His costume is frayed and he looks rough. He still tries to comfort the young hero, stating that while Bakugo can't use any knowledge he has gained fighting Shigaraki, he did an excellent job. It's a quick scene, but it's something I really enjoyed. Best Jeanist calls him by his hero name and tells him that he did enough. Truthfully, I can't get enough of Best Jeanist being a mentor to Bakugo. I think his internship with Best Jeanist really matured him. Unfortunately though, Bakugo doesn't really respond. All he does is continue to watch the fight unfold, making comments under his breath. His analysis of the fight reminds me of Deku, and it looks to be something Best Jeanist is admiring, if his shock expression is anything to go by. Best Jeanist's own internal monologue is what ends the chapter. He's amazed that even after such a brutal fight, Bakugo isn't giving up. Instead, he is watching to learn, analyzing attack patterns, and perhaps even getting back into the battle himself. The chapter ends with a full page of Bakugo as he watches, with the ominous text that reads, "What is it that those eyes see?" I'm really hoping next week we continue with this fight. I have a feeling Bakugo is learning Shigaraki's mannerisms in battle to overcome him. It's like when Deku fought against Bakugo in that villain training exercise. Bakugo is seemingly using that same analysis to learn what Shigaraki will do. Everyone has mannerisms, and surely that extends to Shigaraki and All For One. We'll just have to wait and see. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.